Hi, beautiful souls, welcome. So, my energy around this deck is evolving. It's kind of been all over the place. I don't know how you have felt about this journey. This is quite an evocative deck, and I want to read you something. I'm sure you've already read it from the guidebook for the Hermit, which is called Time in this deck. We're looking at the nines today. That I think I may as well just go there now. I did have it in hand. That really kind of struck me. And I've been trying to read between the lines as I explore this deck. Why don't I read the whole thing just to kind of get us in the mood for today? When the Hermit shows up, it indicates, and interesting that she calls it Hermit and yet she calls the card Time. So, yeah. It indicates intentional solitude, removal from the world, and introspection. Completely agree. Completely agree. This is exactly how I would put it as well, too. People who are in troubled relationships with their families, partners, friends, communities, and physical surroundings tend to have difficulty they tend to have difficulty feeling as though they have a voice and in finding the power and confidence to identify what they want and have agency to achieve it. When I read this part, I was like, wow, I really hadn't thought of this in terms of a response to other people. And I think this tells me a lot about the creator of the deck. And I have alluded before to suppositions that she was going through something rather dramatic when she was creating this deck, and this deck was a healing experience for her. And so let's just reflect on this a little bit. So people who are in troubled relationships with their families or partners need space. And maybe this is this is my journey as well too. I've shared a little bit about this when I dove deep into my personal work. My husband at the time kept a distance. So the more that I went into myself, the more that he became distant. Just my own personal reflection. I've reflected on this before, of course. And yet, my motivation, and I think it's the motivation that I find really fascinating here. My motivation was, if I heal myself, there will be a ripple effect for the relationship, for the family. And the opposite was actually true. So as I read this, it's really expanding my mind on how or why people would want to retreat into themselves, or to go to retreat, or to spend time alone, or to, you fill in the blank, take a sabbatical from life. Because they don't feel like they have agency. Their voice is not heard in the relationship. Their voice is not heard in the situation. And so going away and spending time alone is, the intention for that is to find the voice, to get to know one's identity. So this would be in strengthening the solar plexus chakra, in finding a new light. So there's many, many things in this card that I find fascinating. One is that this hermit is journeying across water. I love that he is intentionally not causing ripples. So the way that the hermit moves like an acrobat across the ocean, it's like he touches the water, but he causes no ripples. And I love that level of awareness. I think that's beautiful. And I can also say, I have a photo of me journeying in India, and I know that feeling of, let's cause as few ripples as possible. You know, it's like when you enter a temple, white woman, Indian culture, wear Indian clothes, cover up, cause as few ripples as possible. Don't disturb other people's experiences. This is also a really interesting point here, and I'm hoping that some of this will shine through when we look at the minor nines. So that was the main thing that struck me. Separation and distance is required to retain it. Okay, so yada, yada, yada. So I just found that really, really cool. The other piece too is that she talks about inner and outer landscape. And this is a theme that has been arising. This word actually keeps coming up. It's been important in some personal readings and observations. And I actually really love that term, inner landscape. And so the theory here is that by this retreat, by taking retreat, we journey into the inner landscape. And by healing the inner landscape, the outer landscape feels a lot better, safer. So I think that's really beautiful. I appreciate when a deck creator gets me to look at something in a very different way. I have a feeling I shuffled these cards. I have a few copies of this deck, and this one's usually sorted, but I think I used it for a reading. So here is our Hermit card. Ripplelessly journeying across water. So I just find that kind of gorgeous. Now, the other piece here is that there are two other symbols. One is the fish, which is from the Justice card, which I don't think we've talked about. And her point here is that justice as karma, divine will, you cannot, what do I want to say? It's not an escape. You can't retreat, and actually you can. I know people who have lived at the ashram for a long time and never gone home. So you can retreat forever. But the point is eventually karma will come around and kick you out. And this also, I've heard this story many times. So people go and they find Swamiji, and they spend years at the ashram. And finally Swami says, you have work to do. You're going back to America to do this. So the message here with the fish, with the karma fish, is that eventually karma will kick back in. So you can have this space and you can have this time, but eventually karma will rule. So I also appreciated that message. And then the moon, so that cyclical energy is meant to reflect the inner landscape. So yeah, I'm kind of, and I've read this guidebook. I've worked with this deck on and off for a long time, and I just find it kind of cool that all these new things are coming through. So now in the first two suits, we have the princess, and in the swords, we have the queen, and I'm going to get them out all on the table for you. So 9 is a number of completion. right? It is a 333, sacred divine number. And in this deck, I feel like this theme of reconciling inner and outer landscape is a very important theme. My camera is flipped or something. What's going on here? There we go. Sorry, I can't work on the table and have my camera flipped. It's just too weird. So there's this theme of, in all of these cards, of harmonizing the inner landscape. And if we harmonize the inner landscape, then the outer landscape won't be such a scary place. And I really like that. Now, mind you, I am paraphrasing. I am reading between the lines. These are my own takes on what is going on in this deck. So if you are seeing something else, please be sure to write something in the comments below. I've had an interesting day, so I don't have all the cards handy. So let's talk about the 9 of Staves. We did look at this last week when we looked through that whole suit. Infinity sign over the snake. The snake kind of looks free, as does the princess overhead. And those 9 staves form a halo over her head. So instead of being sticks of will, they've become kind of magical. And I also feel that in this this number, that it's like we have achieved a level of magic, and that's kind of fun. That's kind of fun. You do all this work, and not that we do self-work and self-study for reward, but you actually experience the benefits. So people ask, how can I improve my intuition? How can I learn to receive messages more clearly? Well, you have to practice. You have to practice. There's no other way. Sometimes we will receive, in yoga, it's called Shaktipat, where the guru can actually speed up karma or shift a frequency. But that happens very rarely. I think most of these things, sometimes it happens through a death, granted, or an NDE, near-death experience. But usually it's through practice. And so through the journey of each of these suits, the prince or the princess, the princess or the queen, I believe, in these cards, has learned. She has expanded. And I want to look individually at the cards and how that is showing. So 9 of will, 9 of fire, 9 of drive. We come to this place where we feel the reward of our journey. This is where I understand, I truly believe what my great work is. I truly feel why I'm here on this planet, and my outer experience is reflecting how I feel about my work. And that is something, that I feel also I am on the verge of. If the world would reflect how I feel about this work, oh my God, that would be so amazing. And how that response would show up, I have a couple of ideas or signs, but I want that for everyone, to let whether that inner work is parenthood or that inner work is, I don't know what it is, your thing. Might be your job. And the world reflects back how you feel about it and the energy that you have put into it. And I think that's why we're seeing the wands transformed into halos, into a halo. Okay. Ooh, yeah, Eden also said this card is epiphanies. Epiphanies. So that fits very well here as well, too. Yeah, and then she says there's a sacrifice. So this is always something we need to understand, is that when we do get to a peak, then there is a new cycle. And so not only are we not at that exciting point that we have at the beginning when the ace is a seed, but yeah, there's a bittersweetness to this part of the journey as well, too. So yeah, we mustn't forget that. Now, in the Nine of Cups, she, the princess, has grown stronger. And she uses the word big enough emotionally. I think that's a funny expression. Big enough emotionally that her inner landscape fills and fits inside her. She doesn't wear it on her sleeve. She doesn't walk around with a frown. She radiates her happiness. She radiates her emotion. So in the same way that the Princess of Staves is radiating her will, is radiating her drive, because she is the embodiment of her purpose. The Princess of Water embodies this. Her internal landscape is at peace and is experiencing beauty, and therefore the outer landscape is beautiful. And so it's the Hermit, the time card, that helps us, reminds us that we must journey inside to learn, to understand, to know, so we can harmonize this internal landscape. The Hermit, in a lot of different cards, sometimes the Hermit is going into a cave, into the underground. Sometimes the Hermit's at the top of the mountain, getting, far away from the city, closer to God, off on retreat. The Hermit is on a journey, and I've always seen this journey as an internal one. This is one where interesting that this card represents Virgo. I don't know how that fits, actually. Maybe one day. I haven't reconciled all of the zodiacal signs with their associated quirk card. There's a peace, there's a quiet to this. The waters are still. The waters are becoming stiller. Yeah. All right, so in the sword suit, can we apply these same principles? Well, I'm going to try. So we saw the king in the Eight of Swords attempting to climb through this crevice, being very mindful of nature, being very mindful of the environment, where he places his swords and his other mountaineering tools to emerge from this crevice. And to me, this is agency, this is power, this is such a beautiful... Yes, I have found myself in this place. Maybe the city crumbled around me. Maybe I fell. Maybe I bit off something more than I can chew on my climbing adventure. Whatever it is, I'm using my mind, the power of the mind. I'm using my agency, my control, to navigate this and simultaneously be respectful of my environment. I'm not going to fall into my ego and try to dominate the land. That's not what's going on here. It's a great card for the Eight of Swords. The Nine of Swords. And actually, this is another card I like. So the Queen, this is the Queen. Remember in the Four, how she was resting inside the tree? That card, I actually drew it yesterday as my card of the day. This is my trimmed copy of the deck. So we see her here, and then we see her there. And okay. In the Four, I see her as wanting to integrate with the city, integrate nature, the city, herself, her wanting to integrate her inner and outer landscapes, feeling protected by the natural environment that is overtaking the city. And in here, in this card, I feel that she is recognizing that she is, it's like this is, I'm little, nature is big, that kind of thing. I'm realizing that I'm only a dot upon this planet. Nature is mysterious. Nature is bigger than I am. It is extremely powerful. Okay, now I'll share with you a couple of Eden's words and then the other reason I love this card. The Queen of Swords clings to one of the trees, the city, in the last mighty crash of its own apocalypse, as it thunders down around her, while the moon with a strange new face looks out at us from the sky, while the mad queen howls or sings or screams below. This is the card of nightmares, of suffering and pain and losing hold of reality and even the sense of one's own identity. So here we have another identity thing going on. In this violent and destructive leap past the limits of the human mind, however, we are surrounded by truths not normally available to us within the world we can understand. So again, we have a message here that if we are always looking without, we can't learn, we can't understand. It is only through going within that we will find peace and calm. Inside madness and terrible mental suffering. And we can dial that down a huge notch, inside the sleepless nights, inside the chronic tinnitus, inside the restless mind that won't allow me to sit quietly for 5 minutes, lies the food of the gods, and only fools and artists willingly reach into this dangerous place. Only fools and artists, only aspiring yogis, I think people who are brave enough to dive into their inner landscape. And it is in this place that we find the answers. This is where we find, it's where we find God. And I've been saying this for years, and I have never heard anybody else talk about this card in this way. If you can stay one moment more, Or you can continue this practice every morning at 5:55 for the next 55 days. You will have a breakthrough like you've never had before. This to me is one of the breakthrough cards. We need to learn to bear the intensity of this noise. And sometimes I honestly feel this noise is spirit trying to communicate with us. And our frequency isn't high enough to translate it. I believe it's in the Numinous Tarot that there are these, it's a very I believe there's wind chimes, but they're not pretty wind chimes. They're really loud ones with the long, long bars. This also reminds me of being in yoga class and the teacher going around with her bell. And I have this one teacher that does this. And, when the frequency of the room is low, people are blue or carrying their stuff. She goes around with her little bell trying to shift the frequency of the room. And if you have a monkey mind, or you have tinnitus, or you are annoyed in any way, that little bell is so annoying. But the intention here is to break through. So bell, sound. This is all part of this journey. And I've also shared with you that thing that's over by my front door, about the artists and the mad people and the poets and just embrace them all, because they are on the verge of understanding something that many people never ever get to understand. So in all of these cards so far, there is this intent or this message of balancing and embracing and filling the inner landscape, harmonizing the inner landscape so we can be happier, so we can be more peaceful in our lives. And then in the 9 of Discs, all of that goodness, let's call it Amrit, sweetness, honey, nectar. And I see that in the horse. In this card, the horse is not inside her, it's separate. But the horse has transformed. It's grown wings. It's become a unicorn. So in a way, this is not, I was going to go somewhere different, but I'm changing plans here, changing course with the horse. The horse she has freed the horse. And it is forever transformed. And now it has wings. Now the horse has wings and it can fly away. Really interesting contrast to the fish inside the princess in the 9 of Cups. She finds her freedom through releasing the horse. And I would say that makes her feel a whole lot lighter. And she sees that in releasing the horse is transformed and free and becomes a elemental being instead of a 3-dimensional being. So that's really cool. Honestly, I'm riffing here. And these, no matter how many times I sit, sometimes I just have to get in front of the camera, in front of the microphone, and this stuff comes together. I love it. So in Eden's words, the accumulation of experience and work and learning and the choices we make during our lives is the accomplishment of our ambitions, and it can be used to build a new world, one that fits us and our community more closely. The horse has grown wings. Biological life may sometimes transcend itself and create real change in the outer world. With others, which others, there's quite a few typos in this book, may benefit from. This card carries the possibility of leadership, of service to the larger good. Yeah. Great number. Now, does this fit with 9 as a divine number? 9 as the number of divinity? I would say in the harmony sense. It's only when we connect with our inner wisdom that we find this level of peace and freedom. So yeah, I think that fits. I think that works. So those are my thoughts on the 9s. Going forward, I believe we have 2 more suits to journey through and a bunch of majors, the 10s as well. So I'll see you next week, and I will try to get the thumbnail up a little bit earlier so you can see which suit I'm going to venture through. We've done 3, right? So there's only cups left to do. So next week we will do cups, and then we'll go back to the 10s. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you soon. Take good care. Namaste.